technologies will define the next 100 years. Here's the strange part. They're arriving at once because the first one on this list is compressing the timelines of the other 9. 100 years of change is coming. Most of it may land in the first 20 years. Number 1. Artificial General Intelligence. Every tool, institution, and profession that depends on human cognitive labor gets transformed when a machine can do that labor faster, cheaper, and at unlimited scale. One rung deeper, AGI, a system that matches or exceeds human performance across essentially any intellectual task, isn't just another productivity tool. It's a single technology that can simultaneously practice medicine, write software, conduct scientific research, provide legal counsel, and analyze financial markets. Not something that helps experts work faster. A system that removes the expert from the bottleneck entirely. One rung deeper still, when the bottleneck shifts, the downstream effects hit everything at once. Scientific progress accelerates because hypotheses can be generated and tested at machine speed. The cost of expertise collapses because access to it is no longer constrained by the supply of educated humans. The leverage available to a single operator scales with the intelligence of the systems they can direct. My read, we reach general intelligence and superintelligence within a few years of each other, probably before 2030. The timeline won't be exact, but I don't think I'm wrong about the direction. The capital signal is the clearest confirmation available. The Stargate project is a $500 billion compute infrastructure commitment, the largest private capital project in history, built on the assumption that what requires this much compute is worth building now. When the people closest to this technology make bets at that scale, the honest analyst has to treat that as evidence. Number 2, robotics and embodied AI. Physical labor has always been the ceiling on what humans could build, maintain, and produce. Robots that can navigate unstructured environments, that can walk into a factory, a hospital, a construction site, or a home and perform tasks they weren't explicitly programmed for, remove that ceiling. Manufacturing becomes dramatically cheaper because labor costs approach zero for physical assembly work. Supply chains become more resilient because the bottleneck of workers in specific locations disappears. Dangerous work gets done without putting human lives at risk. The commercially available version today executes specific scripted tasks. The version coming within this decade reads a room, adapts to it, and does the work. The same flexibility a human worker brings. The form factor won't always be humanoid. There will always be contexts where other designs make more practical sense. But there will be a period where early adopters feel the value doesn't justify the price. That gap narrows more and more over time. Bank of America projects 3 billion humanoid robots in service by 2060. At that scale, the economic and social restructuring isn't incremental, it's foundational. Number 3, brain-computer interfaces. The interface between human thought and the digital world has always been indirect. You form an intention, translate it into physical movement, use that movement to operate a device. Brain-computer interfaces remove every step between the intention and the outcome. In the near term, this technology restores capability to people who've lost it. Paralysis, ALS, locked-in syndrome. The first human to use a Neuralink implant moved a cursor and played chess using thought alone. That is the beginning of the capability curve, not the peak. Further along, a direct channel between human cognition and AI systems. Not typing a prompt and reading a response. A continuous, low-latency integration where the AI becomes an extension of how you think rather than a tool you consult. memory augmentation, cognitive bandwidth that scales beyond what biology provides. This is the part I'm least sure about on the timeline. Medical implications, safety constraints, and regulatory friction are all real. By mid-2025, more than 5 humans had received neural implants, including patients with ALS and spinal cord injuries. The underlying premise is no longer theoretical. I don't think consumer applications arrive inside 5 years. But the direction is clear, and the distance between not consumer-friendly and civilization-altering is shorter than most people treat it. Number 4, fusion energy. Every energy problem humanity faces, climate change, geopolitical dependence on fossil fuels, the power required to run AI infrastructure at scale, has the same solution at its root: an abundant, clean, effectively unlimited energy source. Fusion is that source. It produces no carbon emissions, no long-lived radioactive waste, and runs on hydrogen isotopes available from seawater. The fuel supply is effectively infinite. A working fusion plant produces roughly 4 million times more energy per kilogram of fuel than coal. It cannot melt down. The reaction stops the moment the conditions sustaining it are interrupted. Fusion is also essential for supplying the power data centers are going to need as AI scales. The energy constraint on AI is real, and it's already showing up in infrastructure planning. Fusion is one of the few things that actually solves that problem rather than manages it. Commercial fusion is likely by 2040 to 2050, according to most current estimates. AI-accelerated plasma simulation is compressing that timeline. The two technologies are in a feedback loop. AI helps fusion arrive faster, and fusion helps AI scale further. That pairing is worth more analytical attention than it's currently receiving. Number 5, quantum computing. Classical computers process information in bits, ones and zeros. Quantum computers process information in qubits, which can exist in multiple states simultaneously. For problems where you need to evaluate an enormous number of possible solutions at once, molecular simulation, cryptography, optimization across complex systems, the performance difference isn't incremental, it's exponential. Drug discovery accelerates because quantum computers can simulate molecular interactions at a level of precision classical machines can't reach. Material science accelerates for the same reason. And current encryption, which secures every financial transaction and private communication on the internet, becomes breakable. That last implication is the most urgent and also the most underreported. In December 2024, Google demonstrated below-threshold quantum error correction, clearing the barrier that kept quantum computing constrained for 3 decades. That result shortened the timeline for cryptographically relevant quantum computing in a way most institutions have not yet accounted for. The window to upgrade encryption infrastructure is shorter than the public debate suggests. Number 6, genetic engineering and radical life extension. The human body ages and dies because of processes that are at their roots biological, and therefore potentially modifiable. Genetic engineering is working to understand and intervene in those processes, not just to treat disease after it appears, to edit the underlying code that makes disease possible in the first place. CRISPR allows researchers to locate a specific sequence in the human genome and rewrite it with precision that would have been unimaginable 20 years ago. Sickle cell disease which has killed people for millennia, now has a one-time cure. Huntington's, cystic fibrosis, hereditary blindness, diseases caused by single genetic mutations become treatable at the source. Further along, cellular reprogramming, which reverses the biological markers of aging rather than treating its symptoms. AI in quantum computing will accelerate this research considerably. The ambition isn't extending healthy years by a decade. It's understanding aging as a process that can be interrupted or reversed. A world where genetic disease is largely eliminated and biological aging is significantly extended doesn't just change medicine. It changes economics, culture, the structure of families, and what a human life is expected to contain. That's the part that isn't being discussed nearly enough. And it's the part I find most interesting to think through. Number 7. Space colonization. Every resource constraint humanity faces, rare earth minerals, energy, physical space, disappears when the solar system becomes accessible. The asteroid belt contains more iron, nickel, and platinum group metals than all of human civilization has ever mined. The sun produces more energy in 1 second than humanity has consumed in its entire history. The immediate step is cost reduction. SpaceX has already compressed the price per kilogram to orbit by roughly 90% from what it was 2 decades ago. As launch costs continue falling, orbital manufacturing, space-based solar power, and asteroid mining transition from speculative to economical. Mars colonization provides something even more fundamental, a second location for human civilization. Every extinction risk scenario currently exploits a single point of failure. The path to removing it runs through infrastructure, not heroics. Making it cheap to get there is the prerequisite for everything else. Number 8. Advanced materials and programmable matter. Every technology on the list is limited by the physical materials available to build it. Fusion reactors require magnets that can contain plasma at 150 million degrees. Quantum computers require materials that maintain quantum states at near absolute zero. Brain-computer interfaces require electrodes biocompatible enough to remain in neutral tissue for decades. Advanced materials are the enabling layer underneath every other capability on this list. Programmable matter extends this further. Structures that reconfigure themselves, surfaces that switch between rigid and flexible, medical implants that change shape after insertion. The most consequential near-term development is in superconducting magnets, the breakthrough that makes compact fusion reactors possible. The broader category of materials that didn't previously exist is typically where the least predicted technology jumps originate. That's the part worth watching, because the surprises tend to come from here first. Number 9. Autonomous weapons and AI warfare. Every other technology on this list creates possibility. This one changes the nature of conflict, and conflict has always determined which civilizations survive to use the other technologies. Autonomous weapons are systems that can search for, identify, and engage targets with limited or no human authorization for each individual decision. They're already deployed. Ukraine has become the largest live-fire testing ground for autonomous weapon systems in human history, loitering munitions that hunt specific targets, AI-directed systems, drone swarms that coordinate in real time. The trajectory leads to a world where military advantage belongs to whoever has the most capable autonomous systems and the most resilient networks connecting them. Human reaction speed stops being the limited factor in combat. Scale stops being constrained by the number of soldiers available. The ethical and governance questions this raises are not being answered at the speed the technology is advancing. That gap is the actual risk, independent of which specific system gets deployed first. It's worth keeping an eye on, even if you're not primarily a defense analyst. Number 10. Next generation propulsion. Every ambition for space colonization eventually collides with the same constraints. How fast can you move? And what does it cost in energy and time to get there? Chemical rockets, the current standard, are spectacularly inefficient. Nuclear thermal and nuclear pulse propulsion would reduce travel time to Mars from months to weeks. Fusion propulsion, if commercial fusion arrives on the timeline I described, would open the outer solar system to practical exploration. Beyond known physics, and I want to be careful here about how I frame this, Pentagon UAP disclosures have introduced testimony from credentialed observers describing craft with flight characteristics that aren't consistent with any of the above. Instantaneous acceleration, no visible propulsion, transmedium travel between air and water. That has led serious analysts to speculate about gravity-based or inertial propulsion systems. That would represent a fundamental departure from known physics, not an extension of it. Whether those accounts reflect classified human technology, something else, or misinterpretation is generally unknown. What's worth noting is that the question is being taken seriously by people whose job is to evaluate threats accurately. The evidence base is thin. If propulsion physics has headroom that current science hasn't mapped, the implications dwarf everything else on this list. The distinguishing factor on this list, compared to every previous generation of lists like it, is AI sitting at the top of the stack and compressing the development curve of everything beneath it simultaneously. The next 100 years aren't evenly distributed, but most of the change might land in the first 20. Drop the technology you think I underrepresented in the comments. Thanks for watching. Make sure to watch this next video about emerging and future technologies.